And now it's time for 3x3 Experiment by JCD, comparing stories from ABC, CBS, and NBC. The never-ending 3x3.
This evening with President Biden now sending several thousand troops to Eastern Europe as new satellite images show Russia's continued military buildup along the border. Kristen Welker is at the White House with more.
Tonight, in a show of force, President Biden deploying 3,000 U.S. troops to Eastern Europe with fears escalating Russia could invade Ukraine. The Pentagon saying 1,000 soldiers based in Germany will be deployed to Romania, and 2,000 troops from Fort Bragg in North Carolina will go to Poland and Germany. 8,500 U.S. troops had already been placed on high alert, with over 100,000 Russian troops amassed along the Ukrainian border. New satellite imagery tonight appearing to show those forces growing.
We do not know if Russia has made a final decision to further invade Ukraine, but it clearly has that capability.
The president has ruled out a combat deployment to Ukraine, late today saying Putin's actions prompted his move.
As long as he's acting aggressively, we're going to make sure we reassure our NATO allies in Eastern Europe that we're there.
Today, the Kremlin calling the troop deployments unfounded and destructive. It comes one day after a defiant Vladimir Putin said the U.S. has failed to meet his security demands, including that Ukraine be barred from joining NATO. But he also insisted he does not plan to invade Ukraine and is open to more diplomatic talks. Meanwhile, NBC's Aaron McLaughlin getting a rare look along Ukraine's border with Belarus tonight.
Over that way is Belarus, where there are thousands of Russian troops with only a handful of Ukrainian border patrol standing guard on this side.
And getting mixed reaction from people there.
Are you worried about war?
No, this store owner says.
Are you afraid?
Everyone is worried. Anything can happen with Russians, he says.
And Kristen, do both sides leave at least a path for diplomacy?
They do, Lester. That's exactly right. President Biden, in fact, is going to talk to the French president tonight. Meanwhile, the Pentagon saying these U.S. troop moves are temporary and they will still be under American command. Lester.
All right, Kristen Welker at the White House. Thank you.
Other news tonight into the tensions with Russia over Ukraine. Tonight, President Biden now ordering 3,000 U.S. troops to Eastern Europe to back up NATO forces amid the Russian buildup along Ukraine's borders. Tonight, Russia already out with its response. Our senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell in Ukraine again tonight.
Tonight, new satellite images of Russian forces massing north of Ukraine as President Biden orders American troops to deploy as a show of support to NATO allies.
The current situation demands that we reinforce the deterrent and defensive posture on NATO's eastern flank.
3,000 troops being sent to Eastern Europe, though not Ukraine. 1,000 are based in Germany and will head to Romania. No deployment dates yet, but we're told in the coming days. 2,000 troops will move from Fort Bragg in North Carolina to Poland and Germany. These are in addition to the 8,500 troops already on heightened alert. The Pentagon stressing these deployments are not permanent, but designed to bolster allies in the standoff with Russia over Ukraine. The Kremlin has over 100,000 troops along parts of Ukraine's borders, though insisting it doesn't plan to attack and that the new troops to the north are just there for training. Tonight, Russia condemning the movement of American forces, calling it a destructive step that fuels military tension.
We do not know if Russia has made a final decision to further invade Ukraine, but it clearly has that capability.
Until now, the administration has said the risk of invasion was imminent. Now, no longer using that word, simply saying Putin could invade at any time. If a war comes, this region is where it's likely to erupt. We met some of the few remaining villagers of Zaitsevo, living in fear of war, at the mercy of larger forces and brooding armies. Their message to world leaders is simple. Stop the war. David, the 3,000 troops is primarily designed to try and send a message to Putin. And by leaving the door open to more deployments, it gives the president the option to ramp up the pressure even further. But this is also a high-risk strategy with no guarantee of success. David?
That's certainly true. Ian Pannell tonight. Ian, thank you.
Well, tonight, the standoff with Russia has escalated, with the U.S. saying it will deploy thousands of troops to allies in Eastern Europe as a message to Putin. CBS's Charlie D'Agata reports tonight from inside Estonia, the former Soviet republic and now a member of NATO.
It's important that we send a strong signal to Mr. Putin and, frankly, to the world that NATO matters to the United States. It matters to our allies.
That signal shipping out 2,000 troops from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to Poland and Germany, and redeploying roughly 1,000 forces from Germany to Romania. The decision comes as new satellite imagery reveals a Russian troop buildup in areas bordering Ukraine, including Belarus, where joint military drills took place today with tanks and combat helicopters. Countering that threat in the Baltic nation of Estonia this week, America has been flexing its own military might, sending a squadron of F-15 fighters to strengthen NATO policing missions. These American fighter jets have been deployed with NATO partners on the alliance's eastern flank, right along the border with Russia, and the mission has never been more critical.
What we're primarily looking for is any aircraft that are operating outside of normal international rules that might infringe on NATO airspace.
Such as the Russian fighter jet we're told was intercepted in these skies just last weekend. With tensions rising in Ukraine, the aim is to reassure NATO partners while keeping Russia on watch. The Pentagon has made clear no U.S. combat troops would be sent to Ukraine itself. Today, Russia called the deployment of American forces destructive and unjustified. Nora?
Charlie D'Agata, thank you.
Important conversations for sure.